Hi everybody, I'm Elliot, and if this is your first time here, I am on a quest to read a book in every subgenre of every genre. Wow. This time, I'm going to be reading a book in a category that I haven't heard about before until I started this whole project. You might not have heard of it either, or maybe you have. You are probably much more well-read and much more intelligent than I am. Point is, I am reading a book in a category called Fantasy of Manners. And the book representing that is Swordspoint by Ellen Kushner. Wow, just take a look at this book. Doesn't it look old? It looks like an old book, right? It's a classic. It's got a blurb by George R.R. Martin. He's very popular at the moment. Swordspoint has an unforgettable opening and just gets better from there. It does look like an old book. It looks like a book that it's just like left on the side of like a public school or something. And yes, that is the definition of old. Fantasy of Manners. What is that? Well, it derives from another category called Comedy of Manners, which is essentially a genre that satirizes the manners and behaviors of a society. It's unsentimental. It's, to me, it sounds in my head often a romance involved, and it is filled with stereotypical characters, i.e. flat characters. So Fantasy of Manners. How does that work? I wonder. I did a little bit more research around this genre, and here are some traits of this genre. It usually contains a lot of dry humor. It's usually a romance. Tends to take place in a post-medieval society, but one without technology, and it takes place in a world that is not ours. So presumably this book does not take place in England. My preconception of this book before reading a single word from it is I'm guessing it's gonna be a little bit like a fantasy romantic comedy kind of thing. Can't say I'm like super excited about this one, but this is a classic. When I did my research, this was one of the books to read in the Fantasy of Manners. They're like, this one represents it really well. You're doing research on these projects and you find these obscure subgenres, and you're just looking at all these titles and you're just gonna assume that this one fits correctly in this genre, and you're not sure. Anyways, that's my experience with it so far, but I'm pretty confident that after reading this, I'll have a good understanding of what Fantasy of Manners is. So let's get to it. I am gonna check back in with you around the midway point, and we can talk more. Talk more then. See how I feel about the book. Alright, I am back, and I am almost halfway through Swordspoint by Ellen Kushner. I thought I'll catch up with you guys and let you know how I feel about the story so far. So how do I feel about the story so far? Well, this book is a really good example of introducing characters through a show don't tell type of technique. It is kind of slow paced to start. You really have to have trust in the writer that, okay, eventually you'll know what every character's objectives are, and eventually you will know what the relationship between this character and the rest of this society that exists is. It is, to me, a little hard to get into, especially my reading style of reading in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'm just like, wait, what's going on? This is a very visual book. Ellen Kushner does such a good job creating imagery, especially with the characters' choices. And there is a scene with fireworks that was just so well written. It was like, this is really good writing. If you're reading your first fantasy book, I don't know if this is the first one you should pick up, because I've heard another name for fantasy of manners, and that's manner punk. And it's tricky because it's a very unfamiliar genre to me. It feels historical, but I get that it's not set in a historical time. Feels like, yeah, this could have happened. And fantasy of manner and manner punk really just plays with the idea of a fictional society type of hierarchy, the levels of power each group of people have. And I think this story can be broken down into two layers. There's the bottom layer, which is based around the character of Richard St. Vier. I believe that's how you say this character's name. And he is a swordsman. He is pretty much almost an assassin for hire, which I guess that's what an assassin is, like an occupational murderer. And he's sort of on the ground level. He's, aside from being very skilled, he is a pretty normal guy. And on the second layer, there is Lord Ferris, who wants to take the highest seat of the society. He wants to be the top. He is not currently the top. The top is owned by Lord Holiday. I believe that's what the character's name. I won't be able to find it in here. It really feels like once you get to know these characters, once you get to know their influence and their skills and their power, it really feels like you're reading a chess match, but through the lens of characters as opposed to just like pawns and knights and bishops. I think that's how I would describe Fantasy of Manners. It's like a chess game in like very detailed, very beautifully crafted characters. And that is how I feel about this book so far. It feels like I'm reading it's probably as fast moving as a chess game. There's all these subtleties that are happening. It's not just killing and war. It isn't killing and war. This is really not a book about war or any of that stuff. It's about the subtleties of power. It's the manipulations, the charming of other characters. That is the midway point of Swordspoint, and I'll check back with you at the end to let you know how I feel about the entire story as a whole. Alright, epic finale. Just a regular finale. The regular finale of me reading Swordspoint by Ellen Kushner. How do I feel about this book now that it's over? Let's start with this. I really wasn't expecting the book to end the way it did. A book called Swordspoint. How do you think it's gonna end? With like a kind of epic battle sequence, or a regular battle, just a regular battle sequence. But it doesn't end that way. So spoiler alert, I'm gonna explain my take on how it actually ended. It kind of ends with a twist, but not only that, a little bit of a courtroom drama, a little bit of a murder mystery. I thought there was gonna be a battle, but fantasy of manners. I guess that's the genre, fantasy of manners. People just use their manners and discuss things and work things out, and in the end, no one really ends up dying anymore. A few people died. In fact, a lot of people kind of died, but when it reached the climax, it kind of, I guess that wasn't really what the book is about. So that was my main feeling with it. I was left a little unsatisfied. I'll just say that. There are many good qualities of this book, and one I would like to address is that this might be the first book I've ever read where the leads were homosexual characters. At least I think they were homosexual. It was never really like shoved in my face, like it was never labeled as that, but they were doing things that you know, I just, you know, concluded as that. I feel like this is the way to do it. If it's an unconventional romance, it shouldn't be forced, you know? And I really feel like it wasn't forced. As a writer, sometimes you feel kind of self-conscious. You feel the need to over-explain it. You feel like your audience is dumb. So you need to just explain things more. It's like, no, I'm not dumb. I can figure it out. And this book does this very well. It really treats the reader as an intelligent individual who could figure out the complex storyline all by themselves without any hand-holding, if I may. Kudos to Ellen Kushner for accomplishing that, because that is a very tough task. However, I am not that smart, and I feel like I missed a lot of things. And it goes to show that I still have a long way to go towards being the type of reader I want to be, who's able to pick up on these subtleties without having to flip back or like wonder, oh, who's this person? One thing about this book is that many of the characters she uses different names for the same characters. This really complicates the reading experience, especially for me when I'm just, you know, just casually reading it, you know, about to fall asleep, and it really forces me to focus more, which I don't always want to do. Let's be honest. I really didn't want to do it for this book. I just wanted to read it and enjoy it. And Ellen Kushner, you're making me work. Another thing I want to mention, this doesn't happen a lot in this book. Not a lot, but I want to still mention it because I feel like it's a good time. The idea of poetry in fantasy books as a trope. I don't know how I feel about poetry in fantasy books, or like a song, or just like lyrics, or I just kind of skip through them. Do you skip through them? I don't know. Let me know. Let me know. So one of the main themes that I got out of this book is the idea of people with power versus people with skills. In order to become a person of power, you need to be able to convince the people with skills to work for you. Let's just throw it out there. Which would you rather be, a person with power or a person with skill? Who do you think actually has more of the power? The last thing I want to talk about, the last thing I want to mention from this book is the society, this rule that they have, where I guess the law they have is the person who does the killing, the assassin, the swordsman, isn't the actual criminal. They're not the person with guilt. The real crime is the person who hired them. I don't know if I want to live in that world. It's like dueling it out isn't an appropriate way to solve problems, or there's a lot more. I do kind of want to learn more about all the laws they have in this world and how you have to, if someone challenges you and you get a champion to come and defend your honor, I like to learn more about this, I guess, medieval style of justice. But not right now. Not right now. That is how I feel about Swordspoint. I don't think I am gonna delve that much further into this world. There's a few short stories at the end about the main characters. I assume they go on some adventures. I don't think. I read the main story. I think that's it. Not a rave review from me. Fantasy matters. I don't think it's my genre. This is the first one I've read, to my knowledge. Maybe I'll pick up another one another day and see how I feel. But today is not the day. Not today. Not today. Alright, thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, I am reading a book in every subgenre of every genre. So if you're interested, there's more videos up there about my journey. I would like to see you some more, so take care. Be safe.